Next, we have Nick's favourite cleaning brand, Muck Off, which has been in the crossfires this week after a controversial advert they posted online. The advert was for their new silicone cleaning gloves and featured a spoof video of a guy suggestively cleaning his bike. The clip features lots of close-up rubbing, massaging and poking in various crevices on the bike. The caption alongside it said, "Give that grime a beating with both hands."
Gross.
Clearly intended to be a harmless joke, it prompted comments like, "Our bikes are wet and ready," and "Just finger blast it until it sparkles." What the hell is wrong with people, man? However, it also caused a lot of backlash and made many, particularly women, feel uncomfortable. It was branded outdated, non-inclusive, and damaging to the industry. One of the top comments reads, "It's 2024. Surely you could come up with a marketing plan that was more inclusive to anyone other than basic men who like to over-sexualize everything. Yes, it may get the likes and engagement, but is this really the only target audience you want your brand to attract? Because it definitely repulses a lot of other audience who also need to clean their bikes." Another said, "Tell us your marketing team is all men without telling us your marketing team is all men." That's a great one. So this week's big question, are people overreacting? What we do know is, until very recently, Muck Off's global head of marketing is a lass called Holly that we know, and she's amazing, and she recently quit and wrote a big article about why she's quitting the bike industry. I think she referenced their maternity policies as part of that.
Yeah, I don't think she was specifically referring to Muck Off, but just
the
industry generally. Time off and flexible hours and childcare and maternity cover and all of that kind of stuff is just not up to date, which is interesting. On the topic of are people overreacting, I was having to think about this last night when I put something together, and I have to say, personally, I didn't watch it and get immediately offended.
I didn't get offended,
No.
but I did. I was...
It's gross, isn't it? It's not like...
Yeah, it's just like... Whoa,
I can't say I
what?
laughed. I can't say I found it that funny, but it's just kind of... My immediate reaction definitely wasn't outrage. However, I had to think about it, and it's definitely... I can understand the reasons why many people, especially women, would find it uncomfortable rather than just the surface of it's sexual. And I think there's probably also a lot of people, particularly men, that will be confused by this reaction and outrage, because there was plenty of comments that were like, "Oh, it's just a joke, take a joke, da-da-da." And it's understandable to some degree, because I think the issue that the video raises isn't really something that they will have to deal with in real life. And that is the fact that a lot of women don't feel safe in cycling spaces. And one of the predominant reasons for this is the fear of harassment and unwanted attention, unwanted sexual attention. And I think this advert probably unintentionally sort of plays into that exact fear. So, like, I'm not going to speak for all women. I don't think that anyone should. But I think a lot of us go through day-to-day life very on guard and very hyper aware of threat that's posed by men. And sorry, guys, it's not all of you. We know that. But the problem is we don't know which ones it is. So you have to just be on guard. And that's because many of us do deal with unwanted sexual attention while merely just trying to exist in very non-sexual settings. So riding a bike, jogging, dancing with your mates, walking home alone. And what we learn is very quickly that hyper-masculine and very hyper-sexualized spaces are not generally safe spaces for women, because they tend to be a hotbed for this kind of unwanted interaction. Obviously, cycling is very male-dominated and women are a minority in these spaces, and because of this, you end up being the target of harassment sometimes. I have stories. I know a lot of my female cycling friends have similar stories of harassment. And we're not talking about unwanted attention in terms of someone's just trying to have a chat with you about your day. I mean, so for example, I have a story. I was on my own doing laps of Richmond Park, and a guy cycled up to me and he just kind of gone, "Hi," and hi, okay, yeah, fine, whatever. And he kept going in front of me, and then he kept dropping back and going, hi, and then coming behind me. And he started to ask me questions. And what I realized quite quickly is he was like, are you on Strava? What's your name? And that was a red flag, because it's like, okay, that's location based. He's trying to find out more about me. He wants to know my name. It just felt very like red flags. And what I realized very quickly, he was demonstrating that no matter what pace I was going at, he could keep up with me. He could go faster than me, and he was not leaving me alone. And I said, do you know what? I'm just trying to train. I'm busy. I'm just going to put my head down and get to it. And he just would not leave me alone. And in that scenario, you're on your own. You don't know what to do. And, you know, while an advert of a man just washing his bike suggestively doesn't really have anything to do with that, making an advert about something that's very non-suggestive and very innocuous and making it sexual basically makes women want to exclude themselves from that space, because it automatically feels unsafe. The sort of responses it creates, you know, like the sort of, oh, get in there and blah, 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 blah. It just feels very unsafe. And you go, I don't want to be part of this, just in case kind of thing. And I think that's probably the reason it's labelled uninclusive.
Yeah.
So what's really fun banter to one group becomes exclusionary or self-exclusionary to another group. I don't know. I guess I can understand why women would feel uncomfortable with that. And I guess that is, if they want to decide that that's not their problem, and if, you know, you either fit in or F off kind of vibes, then that's fine. But it's not a great look for a brand, is it really?
It's just very vulgar.
Yeah.
And that was my thoughts of it. I think 30 years ago, that ad would have come out exactly like that, and it would have been really popular, and everyone would have been like, oh, it's a great ad. Whereas, like, society has moved on significantly since then.
Yeah.
Like, it's lazy, it's weak, it's vulgar. Be more intelligent. That's my thoughts on it.
Obviously, on a side note on this, back in the day, adverts, there wasn't social media. Things didn't come out as quickly. So if you wanted to go on TV or a newspaper, you made an advert, it cost money. You then put it in a focus group. So you have people actually commenting it afterwards. And based on that, my mother works in advertising. And I remember as a kid going with her every week to Ogilvy and Mather and sit through. And then they test things. It's not just wildly stick stuff out, because they've massively missed the mark with this one, I think. For me personally, watching the video, the first thing I just thought is, that mist's going to ruin your bike. Sorry, so I missed the whole context of that, but obviously because I'm not a girl, so I don't understand, But I just instantly looked at it and thought to myself, well, like, that's not how you wash a bike, firstly. And secondly, there are loads of gloves out there for washing bikes with, they're like soft kind of microfiber mitts that you use. A lot of companies make them. They work really well. But a rubber glove like that on a bike with muck-off stuff is just another product they brought out that's going to ruin your bike.
Why is that one bad? Because it's silicone.
All the dirt, because they did it on mountain bikes well, so it'll just drag all the dirt across your paint, which will just scratch it. That's not how you wash a bike.
So we're actually saying it's a lazy product as well as lazy
it's
advertising.
a lazy product. It's one of those things which it's killing me with that marketing teams. They're just not thinking things through on...
You are totally right in what you're saying about the immediacy and the pressure to be on social media, have reels, go viral, do all of this stuff. It takes away that layer of how many channels you'd have to go through. I also think I don't know if they're doing any kind of market research or testing, but if that testing is all internal in your company, then you're also not getting a very unbiased opinion. Like if the head of someone goes to a junior
what do you think of
person, female, whatever, and goes, what do you think of that? What's your answer going to be? Oh, yeah, it's great, because you've got loads of people around you going, yeah, you know what I mean? Whereas I guess if you actually properly focus grouped it, you might get other feedback, but you just don't have time to do that in a world of social media, do you?
Annoys me, because there's companies making excellent product, but they don't have this wild, crazy marketing shock value thing.
Yeah.
And then in the end consumer is just not getting the right stuff. They keep buying it, and it's just obviously I feel really angry about this because it makes my life hard. I've had 2 bikes in this week where I had to wash them 3 or 4 times to try and get the chains clean. It gets to a point now where you're just telling the customer, like, your chains are not going to be clean. Change your oil, or this is how you're getting your bike back.
Something we have always done with Attacus, it's something that our style of work, so me and Emily, we've obviously worked together on various projects over the years. Something we always did with Attacus when we used to own Attacus, and something we do all the time with Cade Media as well, is we define what our brand is, who we were talking to, how we talk about those things, what's important. and everything we do, we refer back to that. And this feels like an example of we need to make more money. All right, this product will do. Just get some marketing out there.
Yeah.
And no one has gone, well, who's the product for? How is it used? How does this advert actually advertise our brand and our products in the correct way? They've just kind of they've just thrown it out without actually doing any level of like referring back to some kind of branding or style.
I'm sorry, but I mean, I've had loads of debates with a few brands and distributors this week about marketing, and this is a massive problem. Half the people working in this industry in marketing don't come from a marketing background. They just worked in the company. They did a few things. Maybe you're good on social media or something like that. And all of a sudden with that, it's credentials and you just get promoted internally to do this stuff. And it's a bit of a, it's annoying. People are
but
paying.
I don't see a problem with that. If like, that doesn't mean you haven't got appropriate skill.
No, but then things are getting missed as well. You can't just...
I think sometimes that comes down to lack of diversity of work team. It's into that, tell me your team is all men without telling me your team is all men. I had a quick look on LinkedIn and I could not find any female marketing people at Muck-Off who display themselves on LinkedIn. That might not be true, but from what I could see, there was a lot of guys' names there. And you know what, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think you have to accept that the bike industry is very, very, very predominantly men. However, when you have a diverse workforce, sometimes what happens is you pick up stuff that you miss. Like, I'm not expecting you guys to know what you go through as a woman, or we can't know what people who aren't white go through, you know? Like, you don't have that lived experience, and that's also fine, but that's kind of why you need diversity of thought and opinion. I do think there'll be a lot of people who watch this video and probably who listen to this as well, who do think that their people are overreacting. There's a lot of people who are like anti-woke and all of that kind of thing. And I don't know, it doesn't affect, if you feel it doesn't affect you and you don't understand why people are upset, then fine, if that's how you want to live your life. I don't know.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
And what I say to that is piss off and stop saying, oh, it's the woke police again. Like, people are allowed to be upset and they're allowed to be offended. So let them be, rather than being a...
Yeah, I don't know. Like, as I say, I am a woman. I watched this and I wasn't immediately offended. But the first thing I thought is, I wonder why people are offended. And I don't know, I like to try and think about why that is. And you broaden your knowledge. And if I can make sure my actions make other people less uncomfortable, I would always want to do that. When I showed you this, you made a really good comment, Nick, which was, you are the least woke person ever.
But so, well, that's again, I don't think it's the work side of things isn't what's upsetting me on the thing. I'm just upset that it's going to scratch your bike. I'm just annoyed at, like, I could possibly, if I think about it more, because I would have been one of the people who don't think about it enough. Yeah. And now, but obviously for this topic, because this is the one thing you told me about in advance to think about, is it's more of a, are you making the advert just of shock value?
Yeah.
Because surely... It all comes back again. You are a cleaning company, a bike maintenance company, if you want to call it that. Surely somebody in that company knows that that's a terrible product. And they still made the advert. So did they make the product so they can make the advert? Because in no way did you sit down and design this whole thing, make it and think, this is a good idea. This is how we're going to wash bikes and not destroy them.
But you sent me a message as well that says, because I said to you, look, this is what we're going to talk about. If you don't have any thoughts on it, don't worry, because I've had to think about it and I can lead it if you want. But also, if you want to go against me and me and the woke brigade, then bring it on. I'll have a chat with you, kind of thing. And you wrote back to me, I am the least woke person ever, but also you're surely not a good brand if you're just willing to make people feel uncomfortable. Like, it's just not good marketing.
But yeah, that's what I mean. You're going for shock value.
Yeah, it is, I guess. Oh, it's just lack of thought. I don't even know if they're meaning to offend.
I do think in some circumstances there are people that are too easily offended by stuff.
Yeah.
But I do then think in that circumstance, if you could, there's different situations. If you can, take yourself out of the situation.
Yeah.
Don't.
I actually think part of the problem is social media, or how social media has now impacted it. You've got the comments that people are able to make are just like outrageous. Like we generally don't look at the comments on YouTube videos because there's a proportion of people which are just offensive for no reason whatsoever. And I mistakenly looked at the comments of one of our podcasts the other day, and one of the first comments was some idiot saying something like, he was basically ranting about how much he hates me and how annoying I am.
But he still watched the video.
I don't understand what kind of person sits on their computer or on their phone and goes like, do you know what? I'm such a miserable person. I'm just going to rant about how horrible this like people are just some people are just shit. And I think that is who this muck off advert is for. Those people, and they are a minority.
I love it because I mean that one video on your channel, not the podcast, but on YouTube, about things that I hate. The amount of there's 1,500 comments on there, but then also the amount of abuse that I get off people on there, and I just think to myself, you watched the whole video.
Yeah,
but there's a difference. There's having a difference in opinions.
Oh, that's perfectly fine.
Something.
Yeah.
But like the amount of people which think it's okay just to like can you imagine walking up to someone in the street and going like, "Oh God, you're ugly."
But I can guarantee you, none of them would do that in person.
No,
well, exactly.
Yeah,
That's like
the bravery, of being in your car shouting abuse at other cars, or
you do have to have a thick skin in this job, and there's not many jobs where you get feedback from your audience to such a degree as you do here.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, come say it to my face.
So if anyone wants to start a fight with Jimmy in the comments this week, he's going to read them all and you can say it to his face.
Well, no, I think the rules should be, write it if you'd be willing to say it to that person's face. And then when you do, if you are ever in that person, I sometimes think I'll write these down with their names, and one day I'll probably see one of these people and be like, oh, right, yeah, you're the person that said, too fat to wear aero kit. Oh, right, okay. You can say that again.
But for me, I enjoy that. I enjoy that because if people agree with you, that's good. But at the same time, it gives you nothing. When, let's say, disagree. I'm not saying nasty comments, but people disagree on a lot of stuff that I say, like mud guards, and I completely get it. But I like it because it just gives me more stuff to think about. And it gives me a chance to change my mind. Somebody gives me a really good reason, I'm always going to listen to it and think, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, you got a good point. That's a plus point for the other side. I like it. Debate is the greatest thing ever.
I always welcome feedback, and comments, differing opinions is perfectly fine. But I'm specifically talking about stuff which is just like unrelated or needless. For example, on the muck off thing, some of the comments, or probably a lot of the comments, will actually be people being offended at people being offended. People are allowed to be offended, but being offended about someone being offended is just like, it's a dictatorship.